Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us again. My name is Lelia King, and I'm the Executive Director of Build Carolina. And we are in the midst of a series of conversations with folks who are in our network, in our community. And today I'm super excited to have a very special guest, Shambi Broome. Welcome, Shambi.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to talk to you. Your story is incredibly unique, not only just standing on its own, but also as part of our community and the programs that we run at Build Carolina. So we're excited to talk to you. And to kick us off, why don't you just get started by sort of telling us a little bit about your life today, kind of where you are, what you're doing, who are all the main players in your life, and we'll start there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm a web developer, computer science instructor, mom, and then I also run two companies. So I do have a web agency, JMB Designs, and it kind of blew my mind to realize this year is our 20th year. So that's like really cool, but also
So
makes me feel
cool.
really old. And then I'm the executive director with the nonprofit Webgyrlz Code, and we focus on giving girls and women superpowers through computer science. So we do introduction to web app game development, animation, and I'm excited because we piloted some AI workshops last year. So that's been kind of neat to kind of dig a little bit into that. So that's kind of some of the exciting things, in tech that are going on with me right now.
Just a couple of casual things, no big deal, just little stuff. No, you do a ton of stuff, and we're really, I think we say this a lot to folks that we're meeting in South Carolina. We mention you and say, God, we are so lucky to have somebody like Shambi who is living in our state and who is doing the work that you're doing. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. I love it.
So we are going to have a lot of questions today, and I want to just start with like, how did you get to be where you are? Which is probably a very broad question and a long question to answer. So why don't you start at the beginning? What did your kind of growing up educational pathway look like, and kind of go from there?
Yeah, so I grew up in California, well, in Hawaii for a little bit, then we were in California. And when I was thinking about today, I was like, we really kind of grew up around tech. My mom did what she could to have it in our home. So I remember our uncle gave us a Commodore 64 computer. So people are going to have to Google that, but that was like our first computer, and it was the coolest thing. And eventually we got a word processor, and then a Packard Bell desktop, and in high school, the bulletin board system became a thing, and exploring that. So I kind of was always around tech, and that got me really excited. So, and even in high school, senior year, I remember an article that just made such an impact on me that we read, and it was entitled, "What is this thing called the World Wide Web?" And the idea of what that meant for our future was just so amazing for me. So when I graduated high school, I really burnt myself out in high school. I did, like, I think I pushed myself too hard. So I actually took like a 9 year gap year. And in that time, we moved from California to South Carolina, and I started working in retail. And I really enjoyed retail sales. So I said, well, I'll kind of use that like my college education. So I'll take 4 years and learn sales, marketing, business management, and then get paid to do it. And I enjoyed that for a while, but then got burnt out doing retail sales and started thinking about, well, if I went to school, what would I go to school for? So I looked into like interior design because I love being creative and that type of thing. And in the meantime, I was at home building websites for, like, I did a family newsletter, and I was doing it on Yahoo GeoCities. So again, something else for people to Google, Yahoo GeoCities. But I was building websites, and just the internet just intrigued me so much. So around that time, I was trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do if I get out of retail sales? Spartanburg Tech, which is now Spartanburg Community College, they offered their inaugural web design certification program, and I applied and was able to get a scholarship. And so that was one of the that's kind of what launched everything, was being able to go to Spartanburg Tech and actually officially learn web design and how to build a website.
So cool. And isn't it kind of fun to look back and think about, when you're in it, you're not necessarily thinking this is a step I'm taking in my journey to become successful or to reach my goals. But when you're looking back, it is kind of cool to, I think, just put together the pieces or sort of follow the thread that has gotten you to where you are. And one of the things that I think is so unique about you, Shambi, is that you take what it's just you described as sort of what your mom did for you in just exposing you to technology and encouraging that curiosity around technology. That's something that I feel like you really continue to sort of inspire others to do. So it's neat to be able to see that that was part of your life, since the very beginning.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I always tell people, I'm like, like my mom is a Trekkie, so like Star Trek was like a big thing, a part of our life, and even to this day, I love the show. So I think just also entertainment about technology and the possibilities really just, it can affect people in a real positive way. And I think that was part of my life too, of, you know, if we can think like, how cool would it be to have this tech, even if it's not built now? Well, let's try to figure out how we can build it.
It's really neat. So help us keep filling that gap between, like, you go to this program, you got a scholarship, then you successfully complete that. You check a box, which is great and helpful and definitely kind of more formally opens a door for you. So what happens next?
Yeah, so I was like excited, ready to go work for a company. What was really cool about our professor, because keep in mind this was the early 2000s, so working as a web designer was still kind of a new concept. So she let us know you're either going to work with a startup company or you're going to have to start your own company. So as a result, our final project was actually a business plan. And so that was just cool that she kind of let us know when we start applying, this is probably what you're going to face. So I got interviews with two companies and I went to both interviews, and the men that interviewed me saw my retail sales background, and they spent more time in the interview convincing me that I wanted to be their salesperson and not their web designer. So after I left my second interview, I was just mad. I'm like, I'm applying to be a web designer, but you did not want to talk to me about anything about hiring me for that position. So I had a 20-minute drive home. I remember after my second interview, and I said, well, if they think I'll be such a good salesperson, I'll go be a salesperson for myself. I have a business plan. So that's what I did. And the next week, I just started cold calling on businesses. And in sales, my experience, what happened is very rare, but my first business I went to became my first client. And that's how JMB Designs started, and how I started working with small and startup businesses to build websites.
So neat. And so congratulations, that has been 20 years. This year, is that right?
Yes,
20
yes.
years. That's amazing. So, what were some of kind of your main challenges during those first few years being on your own business, your first time doing work kind of inside of tech and web design? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest challenge, especially when you start your own company, is just you have to be willing to take the initiative and, not be scared, and not be feel bad if you get those no's and that rejection. But I think also what was a benefit was the concept of small businesses having websites in the early 2000s was still new. And I went in with, hey, we're going to work with your budget. So that was the way that we got a lot of clients, to the point where in 2 years, I had to bring on another developer to help. And she's actually just finished a project for me like last week. So she's still there, working with me when I need her. And so it's been there's been those ups and downs when, you have to go out there and network. You've got to go out there and get the business. But that's where that sales background came in handy. And that's the thing that I just kind of look at is anytime there's obstacles, I'm the type of person that's like, okay, this is an obstacle, but is there a way around it? So if business was slow, it's like, hey, I need referrals. I need something, you're out there going after that business. And then even tech challenges. I started out building websites with hand coding HTML or using Dreamweaver. And little by little, you start with content management systems. So I started, you start hearing about things. So I taught myself how to build in Zoops. That's something else to go Google. And then eventually I went to Joomla, and then now we build with WordPress. And I remember I got into the WordPress world in 2008. Someone reached out to our company and said, hey, can you update and maintain our website? It's in WordPress. And I'd never heard of WordPress. And I looked at it, I said, well, we know how to work with content management systems. Sure, we can do that. And his reply to me was, no, I don't think your company's qualified. And that hurt, but I was like, oh, we're not qualified. Well, guess what? I'm going to learn WordPress, you know? And so anytime someone's ever challenged, my ability to be able to do something, it's kind of like, okay, that's fine. But now I'm going to prove to you that, yeah, I can do it. Our company can do it. We can handle it. So I take those challenges and run with them to show otherwise.
Yes, so good. And I think it's important to point out that that can be really hard, taking some of that kind of feedback, and instead of kind of, I don't know, wallowing in it and letting it kind of keep you down. I feel like time after time after time in your story, you have just made these decisions to not accept those as anything negative, and only to use them to kind of fuel your energy and passion, and kind of your ability to go and teach yourself and continue to move forward, which I love.
Yeah, and even with Webgyrlz Code, we officially started the nonprofit in 2015, and I will never forget. I applied for a pitch competition, and when you have a startup, you're like, it's the best thing in the world. You want everyone to feel the way you feel about it. And I applied for this national pitch competition, and the feedback from the judges, all but one gave negative feedback on the concept. And it crushed me. Like my first, of course, you're human. I got mad, I'm talking back at the email, like, why would they say that, But I remember after I kind of got through those emotions, I said, okay, well, let me look at what they're saying. And now let me figure out how I would be able to tell somebody who said those things to me, if they said them in person, why Webgyrlz Code is the organization that they need to support. And it's now like on our homepage of our website. If you see the 4 points, that was based off of that negative, I'm not going to say negative, constructive criticism that we received. That's how we developed those points to be able to tell people, hey, here's what makes our program unique. Because that was one of them. They're like, we don't see where it's unique. And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell
Mm.
you. And now it's on our homepage. So yeah, it's like if people come at you, we're going to have that initial emotion, but then stop and kind of be like, okay, how can I use this as fuel for something positive?
So good. So tell us a little bit more about what inspired Webgirls Code, and you got it kicked off in 2015. What happened next with that story?
Yeah, so even Webgirlz Code, even that story, I always tell people like an email can change your life. I literally got an email from the Columbia Chamber about a pitch competition that was going to be local. There was an organization in the area called Ingenuity SC, and they had an ideas ignite ideas competition. You just had to have an idea. Well, earlier in the year, some experiences I had with my daughter's fourth grade class, teaching. The teacher said, "Can you come in and teach the kids how to build a Google website?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." So I'm doing the instruction, and during that time, there was a lot of repetitive instruction. And I would say, "Well, what do we do next?" And the boys would like blurt the answers out, or the boys would jump out of their seats raising their hands, and the girls were just sitting there, and I'm walking around the classroom, and some of these girls were 2 and 3 steps ahead of the instruction already. And it just reminded me of like how I was in school. You might know the answer, but you're not going to speak out. And the boys tended to be more vocal, so you just kind of let them take the lead in the discussion. So that experience, along with working in a classroom as a substitute teacher, and students were given an assignment and they could build a web page for their project instead of just doing a regular writing up their report. And the kids were, at the end of the day, at the end of the class, were kind of like, forget it, it's too hard. And I realized sometimes we think because young people use websites and technology, they know how to build it, which they don't. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if you could start in elementary school teaching kids, how to build a website? Because that was my background and my passion. And I wanted to focus on girls when I saw what happened in my daughter's classroom, because I wanted to create this safe space. And I said, how cool would it be to have a program that creates the safe space to teach girls about technology? And that's kind of the idea I had. Then when that email came in, I took that as a challenge. I said, let me see if I could really get this whole idea that's in my head to become a concept I could explain in time for the competition. So I did, ended up going through the process, ended up winning the competition, and got the seed money to be able to launch Webgyrlz Code. So that's really kind of how it started, from idea to reality. And the community, I'm here in Columbia, South Carolina, and the entrepreneur community just like wrapped their arms around Webgyrlz Code, and the support has been amazing for us to grow.
So started in 2015. So you're getting close to that 10-year mark as well.
Yes, time goes by so fast.
It does. Um, which means your daughter is no longer in fourth grade.
No.
What
And it's
is, I would love to hear just sort of what's the impact been, even just in kind of your personal life and professional life, of seeing and kind of following some of the students and folks that have touched that program over the years.
Yeah, it's been amazing. What makes it real easy for me to remember that this is our 20th year, because I actually had my daughter a few weeks after I finished the web design program. So I'm always know like, she'll be 20 this year, so will JMB Designs. But what's been amazing, when you have kids and then you do have a program, you get to test a lot of things out on them. And what I've seen with my daughter and some of the other girls that started when they were in elementary school, taking all of our pilot camps, and the one that really stuck with her and some of the other young ladies was when we introduced Scratch programming. And they learned that they could do animation with Scratch programming. So they really got into taking their art, uploading it, animating it with code, to the point. So now my daughter's a college freshman, and she is actually going for an associate's degree in illustration because she wants to work in the animation industry. And just seeing how that experience through Webgyrlz Code has helped her. There's another young lady, she just graduated high school, and she has her own little digital art business. She's got her Instagram, she takes commissions, and all because of them having that opportunity with learning Scratch programming and getting exposed to animation and taking what they love to do, which is art, putting it with the technology. That's been a great experience for me. And that's kind of like my other little passion, is helping young people who are digital artists, helping them understand that they're part of tech. They are tech people, even though they're artists, they are tech people. So that's been great. And then I'll share another real quick one with one of the young ladies who, during the pandemic, we went virtual. I think like everybody scrambled, who was an in-person program, like, what are we going to do now? We went virtual. And so one of the young ladies who started with us, she did all of our virtual programs through the pandemic, all of our summer programs, after school programs, to the point that she was able to go to the governor's school for summer camp, for STEM summer camp. When I was starting a project in WordPress with a local high school when she was in eighth grade. She actually came and learned how to set up a database, set up software in eighth grade. She joined her robotics team and they went to nationals. And her mom told me that they, first of all, if it wasn't for coming to learn about our program and coming to the camps, they never knew she was interested. They would have never known she was interested in computer science. And then she said, and then we learned that she's really good at it.
Mm.
So those are the stories that it's just amazing. And that's the whole purpose is we want young women to be able to see themselves in technology. And if you start young, and they'll keep that up, and that's our goal. And now we have that track to be able to allow them to do that.
All from Columbia, South Carolina.
Yes.
No, it always reminds me, hearing your story and in some of the work that we do together, I always am reminded of the quote by Marian Wright Edelman, "You can't be what you can't see." And that concept, that representation in this industry in particular matters so much. It's hard to quantify, oftentimes it's hard to necessarily draw straight lines from someone that is successful to exactly what that one reason might have been or what that one kind of spark might have been. But there is, to me, nothing more important than having that representation so that young people, those who may have been following non-traditional pathways, those who have different stories of how they grew up, can see where they might want to go and can know, if I have the curiosity, the ability, innate ability, I can learn, I can teach myself, I can go and find opportunities. And with your story, with what you do, going into schools, going into programs, with Webgyrlz Code, like, at the end of the day, that is what it's about. And it's through those stories that we got connected years ago now, many years ago now.
Yes.
But for our audience who may be watching, and I'm so enthralled in Shambi's story, it's hard for me to pull myself back out and remember, like, how this is cool, but how does it relate back to Build Carolina and the work that we've done together? So why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of how you first got connected with our organization and the many different ways that we've worked together since then.
Yeah. So again, another email. A friend of mine was like, "Hey, have you heard about this program?" And it was SC Codes, and it was a call for mentors. And I'm like, "This is so cool." So that's where it started. I signed up to be a mentor with SC Codes, and went to the interest meetings, and then helped when you guys were at the main library in downtown Columbia, just really helping with learners from the community that were coming in and wanting to see how they could learn on their own for free. And that was one of the things that really stood out to me in the tech world, especially at a time where there were all of these programs that were just out of reach for some people because of the cost. And here comes this program that's like, on your own time, learn for free. So I'm like, that is so right up with what I want to support. And it was it was such an amazing experience. So then when I learned about Develop Carolina, that even more, because when you talk about, excuse me, non-linear and non-traditional ways into tech, that's what I always tell people. When I go to career days, I tell students, that's what I love about tech. There's so many different ways that you can get into it. So when I saw what Develop Carolina was doing with their apprenticeship, I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, I want to support this, because there are so many people out there that just need an opportunity. They have the knowledge, and for some reason, breaking into tech can just be very hard. And now with Develop Carolina, to be able to bridge them into the tech industry as a junior software engineer or similar, um, without having to jump through 50 million hoops. Like that was a thing that just impressed me. And I really wanted to be a part of that as a mentor, and being able to really make what I love in general about the whole concept with SC codes and Develop Carolina is you're making generational changes for people in such a short period of time. And that's another thing that keeps me excited about tech, is that you can look at someone a year or two back and see where they are now and how it's affecting their family. So ultimately, it helps the community get better. It helps, counties get better and your state to be healthier and stronger financially when you do that.
It's so true. This work matters to all of us, no matter whether you work in technology or not. So thank you for making that point. And so for our audience, if you don't know, SC codes, as Shambi was describing it, it does a lot of similar things to a Webgyrlz Code. A really broad audience, though, of primarily adult learners, but can certainly get into kind of high school age. But it's about that initial awareness and exposure to these skills, to kind of the world of coding, programming, technology, even to kind of learning a little bit about the types of jobs and pathways that anyone in South Carolina can take without having to leave. Um, so that's a really kind of broad program, and um, really kind of gets back to that, like, you can't be what you can't see thing, right? Where it helps people kind of know, just give that exposure. Develop Carolina, the apprenticeship, and Shambi is, I think, downplaying her role that she has played in some of these folks' lives. That's a very like full-time, pretty intense program. It's paid work-based learning, registered apprenticeship, and those are folks who have made a really big commitment to, they've already kind of completed a lot of education in most cases. They have the skill already. They know how to code. And they're ready to take this leap into that you took 20 years ago, Shambi, but take that leap into full-time employment in the field. And the program, like, the reason Shambi is such a great fit into our programs, she speaks our language. And so thank you for bringing up kind of just the importance of seeing that diversity in the field. We were actually just looking back at statistics this morning from the first 4 cohorts of Develop Carolina. And we have over 50%, it's 51% of the folks who have been apprentices in that program are women or non-binary, which is well above the industry average. And it's because we have people like Shambi, so thank you, who are paired up with our apprentices to walk with them as they kind of take this big leap. And just doing that, kind of having that person, in this case, a DCA, Develop Carolina advisor, come and walk next to the apprentice who is still going to be experiencing that kind of uncertainty, and say, yes, you can do this, and I am going to walk with you through it and get you from point A to point Z, to see you be successful. So mostly I just want to thank you for that work, but also make sure that the folks who are watching and listening to this know how impactful and important mentorship is in this field. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm huge on mentorship, especially in the tech industry. And, I know I've had people on the business end who've been mentors that have been there for me. It's kind of like, that paying it forward. And especially in tech, and especially if you, are a minority in tech, however you address yourself as a minority, I think that's huge to feel like you have an ally or a sponsor there for you. And that's what I think makes a difference, especially with both programs, SC Codes and especially Develop Carolina, is, those relationships you develop with your mentee are so strong that, but that's what keeps them in the industry. That's what keeps them going. And you're able to And that's kind of my goal with mentoring, is helping someone, like you said, here's what I went through, here's what I did. Yeah, you're going to have people say this or that, but it's okay. If you love it and you know you're good, own it. Let people know that you belong at the space, you belong in tech. So I think mentorship is huge. And anyone that, has that time. And that's the thing that I think some people think, well, I don't have the time. It doesn't have to be these hours and hours and hours a week that you're spending with someone. It can be as simple as an hour a week, or maybe even just emails or messaging, or even I have one. What's an intern now, and we use our Trello board. We don't ever really talk. So if you have that space in your schedule, I would definitely, tell people to reach out to like SC Codes Develop Carolina, to really see, well, how can I be used to help support the tech ecosystem in the state.
So, all of these programs have evolved in the last several years. You certainly mentioned COVID, which is a part of all of our stories, in having to sort of be agile and make changes to make sure those programs were continuing through that. But I know there's also been a little bit of an evolution with Webgyrlz Code, and would love to hear a little bit about the Bridge program.
Yeah. So in the end of, 2022, I guess I say fall, our board was kind of talking about some programs that we wanted to offer. And one was a Mommy and Me web development, 2 generational camp. And with that thought is, well, what are we going to do with the adult learners? And that's when we came up with what we call our Software Engineer Bridge program. And the concept behind that is, someone comes to our web development boot camp, and we generally do that in one day. You learn a lot in one day, but it's fun. And then we have them sign up for SC Codes, those that are interested, for the front end pathway certification. And then where we come into play is, we want to be the support and the mentor to help that mom to be able to actually finish that certification. And a lot of times when you talk to people who do a self-learning platform and kind of fall off, it's life. I mean, they're moms, you've got to work, you've got to take care of a family. So our goal is not just for the moms, but expanding that to anyone that takes any of our web development boot camps, is giving them that support for up to 12 months to be able to finish that certification. And our goal is at the end to get them to qualify for an apprenticeship like Develop Carolina. And when we look at the big picture, we potentially could help someone become a junior software engineer in less than 2 years, full circle. So that's kind of what our ultimate goal is with our Software Engineer Bridge program.
So I wish we had about 30 more minutes to talk. But I just have kind of a final question before we wrap up, Shambi, and would love to just have you share final thoughts on just the challenges that you've been through when you look back over the last 20 plus years of your career, and what encouragement you may have for folks who may have similar challenges or different challenges, but we know that these pathways do not come without bumps in the road. So we'd love to hear from you about that.
Yeah, and one, I guess, the biggest challenge of my life that I didn't mention yet that I had to go through was in December 2022. I was diagnosed with colon cancer and spent most of 2023 going through treatment, but still had 2 companies to run. So, the biggest thing I would say, the challenges I faced, illness, and then again, just people who may look down on you because of your tech stack, or for some reason, I've had people tell me to my face, web developers aren't coders because they build websites. And we've had some interesting, conversations with them about that. I would tell people, number one, be resilient. Like when dealing with cancer, I still had to put on AI camps. We had to fulfill contracts. There were still lots of things we had to do. And you sometimes do have to push yourself, but ultimately it's getting the right people around you, finding that community that can help support you. And that would be the biggest thing I would say, because no matter what challenge you face, if you find the right group of people, and in the tech world, find that right tech community, because when you do face a challenge, they're going to be the people that are going to, pull you up. They may have to hold you, with both arms sometimes to help you make it. But I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of times, tech, you hear a lot of negativity, whether it's about layoffs or attitudes or that type of thing. But I really want people to know the tech ecosystem is amazing when you find the right people, and you'll love it. And that's the one thing that I really love, just being in South Carolina. A lot of times we hear about California and other places, but the tech community in South Carolina and in Columbia is like amazing. So find your people, you belong, find that space where you feel comfortable and stay in tech, and you'll definitely won't regret it.
Oh, Shambi, thank you for being one of those people. I would call a greeter, not a gatekeeper. So important that you're just a really good example of that for us. So thank you. And for folks who may want to connect with you or learn more about any of the programs that you mentioned today, of which there are so many, what are the best ways for them to find you online and connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. So they can go to the Webgyrlz Code website, which is webgyrlzcode.org. So webgirlscode.org. And we're at Webgirlz Code on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then if you want to connect with me, I'm at Webgyrl the number two. And Webgyrl is spelled Webgyrl and the number two, pretty much on any social. So I'd love to connect with anyone who wants to reach out. And you could definitely find me on LinkedIn also.
Thank you so much, Shambi. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.